Hello, welcome back to Pearle Snapp Tarot. Make it snappy. Got a few downloads here. We haven't checked in with you for a while, and I'm not feeling the greatest right now. I had to have a whole bunch of dental work done all of a sudden, and I got a technician that was kind of brought back the movie Little Shop of Horrors to my memory. There's people in that industry that are like energy vampires that like to play with needles, and she was enjoying hurting me. She really was, and I'm really kind of pissed about it. I have a big old swollen face, and it's in pain, and I'm hoping it's not infected, But a tooth broke, and then I had to have a bunch of fillings, and I had 4 deep cleanings, and it was all jammed together into a period of over 2 weeks, and I think it was maybe a little bit too much at once for me, and I'm just feeling really drained by that. So I'm not very well right now, but I'm getting a lot of downloads. I'm getting like a lot of downloads, and so I decided I would bring you some of them. And so I'm just gonna, like I've done in the past, I have my notebook here, and I'm going to read some of this stuff to you. Let's see. As you know, or maybe you don't know, they're having hearings in Washington, D.C. about MK Ultra right now. And that is something that I have told you before in my videos, that I'm pretty sure that I was a subject of some of those experiments, that I'm a MKU graduate, I think I am. But I'm 68 now, and typically from the research I've done about that stuff, of who they did it to and what happens to people that they did it to. Gee, I hope you can hear me. I have the phone pretty close to my face, but I also am running my swamp cooler and a fan, so hopefully you can hear me. Maybe I should try to speak up a little bit. But even talking is painful right now. I can barely get my mouth open to eat anything. I've just been drinking smoothies for the last couple of days. Okay, so I come from a family of Masons, as I've told you in previous videos. I had people in my family who were Eastern Star Masons, and 2 Grand Masters of a lodge in Eastern Washington. My grandfather and his son, my uncle, was also a Grand Master of that lodge, and my grandmother was an Eastern Star. And so I didn't even know any of that until I came here to New Mexico after I was 60 years old, and I was looking at some of the jewelry that belonged to my grandmother that I had in my possession. I never got any real valuable jewelry of hers, but I did get some of her jewelry, which I got her gold charm bracelet, which wasn't all gold, but had a lot of gold on it, and I was forced to sell that since I've been here. I've been forced to sell any jewelry I had just to survive since I've been here. I've been so under attack here. You know some of my story already. If you don't, you can go watch the video, The Snapp Family Curse, because it's about the generational curse that was on my family of Masons and me. And I'm the person that was selected to be the scapegoat. I've had a life filled with scapegoating abuse, okay? And some of the downloads that I'm getting now, that MK Ultra is coming out of the closet, and they're talking about how part of what the CIA did was they groomed people to do crimes and stuff. It's like a big organized crime family. That's what the Masons became. They became a corrupt organization that was like a shadow government, and they're still there. They're still doing this, and they controlled people using these MK Ultra protocols, which involved giving people drugs, abusing people systematically, and hypnotizing people. Those are the three methods that are used to create an undetectable slave, okay? So if you were in service to the corrupt Masons, they had ways of, they would have already groomed you under hypnosis to switch personalities. A lot of these people that have multiple personality disorder were MK Ultra victims, and I have been able to spot some of the readers on YouTube, tarot readers and divination people, the divine messengers. Some of those people are MK Ultra survivors who have multiple personality disorders, and I've found a few of them by watching them. But eventually, if they did this to you, eventually you woke up. And there's no telling when people wake up, but a lot of people wake up like when they're in their 30s. And I woke up when I was in my early 50s. And a bunch of stuff started happening to me on jobs that triggered me into waking up. And I started noticing things that were really weird and asking too many questions, and then I became a problem. But apparently I was always a problem for those people because I was always so tightly controlled. But anyone who did go through the MK Ultra protocols, you had to have a handler, okay? And I woke up when I was at a certain job in Boulder, Colorado, where there were obviously MK Ultra people with handlers in there. It was a university, and there were people controlling people all over the place. And the people they were controlling were weird. They were acting really weird, and they were creating all this disruption and division within the university. And I was working there at that time, and I noticed it all, really. I really noticed it. And they were trying to trigger me too. They were being really mean to me and doing that mean, abusive stuff of, excluding me. They put me in a back office. I was not faculty at this university. I was staff, and I was in their marketing department. And they put me in a back room away from everyone else, and I believe they were using dew weapons on me at work because my skin used to get this really weird feeling where it would heat up and feel like it was vibrating sometimes. And I couldn't figure out what that was, but I began to suspect it was some kind of energy weapon, even before I knew what those were. So these are the kind of things that are done to the people that were in MK Ultra. Later, they followed you around all the time. They had to keep tabs on people because they had hypnotized people, and they knew different whatever commands they used. It might have been a hand gesture, it could have been a word or a color. For me, it seems to have been Walt Disney stuff was used, and songs, a lot of songs and music, and also I think art was used. Art was part of it because I'm an artist. And, what else did they use? They wanted, I don't know what they had me trained to do, but I think I was trained to be a spy because I'm very psychic. I'm like a psychic spy. I'm one of those people they trained to do that, I think. And because of my ability to see through everything and to track things down, and I love detective shows, and I've made videos for you about Sherlock Holmes Twizzlin recently. those are some of my favorite TV shows and movies were always about spies, and they were a lot of the comedies too I loved, like Peter Sellers and Pink Panther, and Columbo is one of my favorites. But my very favorite show ever, spy show, was Sherlock Holmes BBC, which came out just about the time I was waking up in Boulder and realizing that everything there was fake, and that it was like a big money laundering operation. And at that time I was working for an independent marketing firm, but I realized that all their clients were fake and the jobs were fake. So now we know from these hearings that people were being hypnotized so that they could be controlled. If you've never seen the old classic movie, The Manchurian Candidate, well, that's the one to watch, because it's about a controlling mother who was controlling her hypnotized son to become the president. And it's also about an assassination and stuff like that. So some of these people were trained to be assassins, and through abuse and being placed in abusive homes or broken homes, they were groomed and conditioned to respond to these controlling protocols, and they were hypnotized through trauma. And I think I was too. I think I was SRA'd at a very early age. Because my mother told me that they sent me to Idaho. My parents lived in Seattle when I was a baby, but my mother told me that they sent me back to her hometown in Idaho, Coeur d'Alene, to have me potty trained there. And who does that? Okay, so I think what was going on there was I was getting SRA'd at a really young age, like 2 or something, or 3 or something. And so that just sets the stage for you becoming an undetectable slave. And so these are my insights. I am someone who went through that, but I woke up later, and I've struggled ever since to get out of the clutches of all these watchers and groomers and handlers that still want to get me under their control. They still want to hurt and harm me. I've had, since I got stuck down here, if you don't want to be roped in with their agenda anymore, and you don't want to be part of their cult, they come after you and they want to shut you down, get you hypnotized up again, and make you serve them. It's almost like you're a trained dog or something. And that's one of their big triggers. I discovered living here, there's always all these people following me around with dogs. And sooner or later I realized that that's an MK Ultra trigger. Good dog, we want you to behave. Be a good dog, sit, stay, right? Yeah, that's a trigger. And I have a sister-in-law who's heavily MK Ultra, who was adopted over into the United States from Germany right after World War II as a baby, and became a dog trainer later. That was my sister-in-law. I think she's a black widow. I do think that's how my brother died. I do. I definitely do. They claimed that he had AIDS, but I don't think so, because she never did. She's still alive. So she was probably a handler to him. I can't believe that she wanted to marry him, I hear sirens outside, so my phone's all hacked up. So the people here who hate my guts so much, who are trying to hold me down, probably can hear every word I'm saying as I record this. They're sending out their sirens, and they do helicopter flyovers of my house, although a lot of that has abated just lately. And it might be because I got on Facebook and started revealing things, like that I'd had my identity stolen. And then I showed the bad police report that had my name spelled wrong that I couldn't even use to prove I had my identity stolen. And it shocked a few people and got a bunch of cops mad at me all over again. And then they tried to kill me again a few more times, including a massive DEW attack on me last fall, where I was subjected to a massive DEW blast on me from the home just right next door to me. And the guy who lived there was one of the local Mason weirdos who has a wife that comes over to help with the yard work dressed in lacy white blouses. But when she turns around, it's got a wide back like a football player, you know. These Freemasons often get married to transgender women, but they're really obviously men. They don't bother to wear makeup or anything, a lot of them. There's a certain variety of Freemasons, and they are some of the ones that do a lot of crime for them. So this guy is probably MK Ultra too, who used the DEW weapon on me, and who's married to the weirdo guy that dresses like a woman. He's probably an MK Ultra victim too. And so these people in town, they knew all about me. Somebody got my file, and they knew what my triggers were, and somebody got power of attorney over me and lied about where I was, and I died. I basically died, okay? I've been here for 9 years now, missing. Nobody knows what happened to me, and they've been trying to kill me all that time. They need to get rid of these people that woke up and figured things out. So what's going on now with all these crazy people running around that seem crazy, that are trying to kill me and stuff? Who are these people? Okay, I don't know if they're all MK Ultra victims. I don't think they are. I started getting downloads just recently that it has something to do with CERN and some kind of technology that allows disembodied spirits to enter human bodies, and they use those bodies as hosts, and then they come in and they do all this crime and stuff. Okay, that's what I started getting the downloads about this week, that CERN, which was shut down this week, is some sort of a portal. And then I got a download that it's a Stargate. Then I started researching about well, see, these people that come into the bodies and stuff, they're the ones who've been running this long game on the world, really, to take over everything. And so a lot of these people that are occupied, remember the whole occupied thing in Seattle? It started in Seattle. I think that was about these bodies that are hosting these interdimensional consciousnesses that can be projected through a Stargate from somewhere else. They have their bodies, those super collider things, they condense matter, and then they condense it into a super high density beam of light that can then send things through from somewhere else, okay? And I think that's how they do it. And I think that's what CERN was being used for, in combination with all this occult stuff that the Nazis brought in after World War II. They brought all that stuff in to through NASA. A lot of them escaped the Nuremberg trials and were welcomed right on in. And they started the space program. They started the Jet Propulsion Lab. You know, all that stuff about Aleister Crowley and that gang of people, and Jack Parsons and those people were all part of it too. They were all part of the MK Ultra experiments and the occult stuff, the tarot cards that readers are so attracted to and became conditioned back into during the pandemic. That's when I picked it up again. I'd been interested in it in the past, but I never really got into it until after that. Until the pandemic. And I became very interested in it and learned how to do it. And then I realized that this was nothing but a network to it was like a big dragnet to find all the star seeds. And then I realized I've made other videos for you talking about the Hunger Games recently. Okay. I realized that these people genetically engineered people specifically to be participants or like contestants in the Hunger Games. They were making super spies and super soldiers, and possibly we were supposed to be used to fight this war against these interdimensionals, but instead they came in, took over, because there was some kind of time traveling going on. Yeah, you've heard about that too. And CERN might have something to do with time travel too, sending people back and forth between timelines. That's why we have all this back and forth warring going on, like we had in Iran recently, where they say they're going to do this, and then they flip-flop, and then that, and I think that's all facilitated by time travel. I looked up, does Iran have a super collider? Yes, they do, and they have a program where they're building one, okay? So that's the Stargate in Iran. It's a super collider. And there's more super colliders than just CERN. There's a bunch of them, okay, all over the world. And so I think some of those are being used to transport things in and out of here by breaking down the matter or something into a light beam, and then sending it through, by sending it through a particle accelerator, and then beaming that light in, and then reconstituting the whatever they sent over, right? And if it was a consciousness, it might have been a consciousness they could send over and then place it into a human body somehow. I don't know, something like that. Some kind of weird tech where they can they can overcome a human. And I think that's what all these trafficked humans are being used for. All these trafficked humans that came over the border problem we have, are being used to house these interdimensional, consciousnesses, spiritual burps maybe, that are fighting this ground war. And these trafficked people that are bred in these weird trafficking areas, like the one where I am now, they are they are from unwed mothers, and poor people get knocked up by gang members, and then there you have your next host body that's going to have it's weird. It's like a border. We have a border problem that's in the physical, but we also have like an interdimensional border problem where these entities can occupy a human body, and then they send them across the border into the U.S. to do all this mayhem. And that's what was happening during the Biden administration. They were coming across by the thousands, by the hundreds of thousands, and being used to do crime all over the country and fraud and stuff. And now we can see, and all that might have been a project of, it might have been part of MK Ultra, the whole the project that happened at Los Alamos, I'm blanking on the name of the Manhattan Project. I don't know if you recall me showing you my alien hunter hat that I have that has a pin on it. Let me get that again, because I showed you this a couple of years ago, but I haven't talked about it since. So hang on. Here it is. I bought this kind of as a souvenir, but I was passing through White Sands National Monument, and I stopped at their gift shop, and I picked out this pin, not knowing what it was. Okay, this is the insignia for the Manhattan Project. So there's even more weird MK Ultra stuff to talk about there, but I think MK Ultra was a sub-project of the Manhattan Project, okay? And it was also a sub-project of um, of NASA and the JPL and all that. They were ramping all that stuff up at the same time, and of course, Oppie was the director of all that, and he's the one that had the dancing Shiva sculpture outside of there, and it's also outside of CERN. And I am, what did he say? I'm destroyer of worlds or something. These were people who were next generation Nazis, really. They came over here to take over this country after the war and milk it. They were using it as a giant cash cow. The post-war boom was that. That's what that was. They were building up a huge, huge infrastructure and a prosperity that lasted for, decades after that. I was born in 1957, so I'm part of that. It's called the Hinge generation, where you were a bridge between like the weird shit the Nazis were doing and then this timeline now where they came in and they tried to take over everything. They facilitated that border incursion using occupied bodies to pour across the borders and overtake the United States and destroy it, rip it all down, using all the money they had built up during the prosperity years. Okay, so that's my take on the Manhattan Project, MK Ultra, Los Alamos National Laboratory, stuff like that. Okay, so this is what I wrote down in my notebook. CERN is a stargate. Bad ETs come in through their super colliders. There are others that are not yet shut down. These incursions are out of control, just like the illegal alien issue we have at the borders of the U.S. We have a space border problem. The thing is, these illegal aliens are actually interdimensionals who occupy the physical bodies of these illegal aliens. I said, they're people that are disenfranchised, they're from unwed mothers, they're and people in gangs and stuff, and okay. This is super weird, but I just had an aha moment. Where are these bodies coming from? They're trafficked. These are all the trafficked people, okay? We have this horrendous human trafficking problem. Well, those are the people they use to, they SRA them in trap houses, and they abuse them, and then they soften them up, and they do rituals on them. They sometimes SRA these people. That was done to me several times since got out of college, and in college I was gang raped in college. I was gang raped again in Santa Fe about 16 years ago by a group that included a high school bestie of mine who I believe is also an MK Ultra survivor, but who became part of the deep state. Okay, she lured me down into here to be roofied and raped. And I knew what had happened. During that trip, they also chipped me. I think they put a chip in my nose during that trip, because after the trip, I had all these problems with my nose. I had like crusty boogers all the time. And that's a little graphic, but everything about this is graphic. It's horrible. Everything about it is horrible. Everything I've been through is horrible. Everything is a total violation of anything rights you thought you had. Everything. I have been through so many rights violations, and I also think that the Epstein Ranch had something to do with MK Ultra. I think it had a lot to do with it. I think a lot of these politicians that were being offered playmates there were MK Ultra victims, and they might have even taken them into there to refresh their programming, to refresh them, to blackmail them, even to get bad video of them, raping minor girls and stuff. That was Epstein's main business. They make it out like he was the only one who was doing that, and that's not true at all. He was facilitating a worldwide operation to get blackmail material on all these different politicians and leaders. That was his real job, okay? But in the past few years, they've tried to make it out like he was the big bad abuser that did all the abuse. So I don't think so. I think he probably did a lot of it, but he was in charge of roping in all these people to get blackmail material on them, okay? At these wild parties, once you get roofied at one of those things, you do all this wild stuff and you don't remember any of it later. And when they roofied and raped me in Santa Fe 16 years ago, I didn't remember what had happened at all. But I knew something had happened because I had a sore butt the next day and I had been vomiting all night and I smelled like disinfectant. They hosed me down so there wouldn't be any trace of anything left in there. And, they give you a antiseptic enema after they ass rape you. Sorry, this is really graphic. Trigger warning. But I've been through all this stuff, okay? I've been through it all. I knew they had done something to me. Like I said, I knew they chipped me in the nose, too. And then the next day, they were all really mean to me, and they acted like I drank too much and I was such an alcoholic. I wasn't an alcoholic at all. I was never a big drinker. I was definitely a pot smoker, but I was groomed into that. Definitely groomed into that by a bunch of weird boyfriends and handlers that I had in college. And it started when I got into college. And when I left home to go to college in Philadelphia, and the bestie they gave me to there was one of my first handlers, and that person later followed me to Boulder and did more handling of me and more abusive treatment and acted like I was too low life to be friends with her, but I had a better professional job than she did, and I was a talented graphic designer. And so that's where they had put me, into this ad agency, and they gave me a life as a graphic designer after taking me out of Los Angeles, where I had been for a long time, and started waking up there and got in some trouble there. And then my dad came to get me out of there, and all of a sudden I had a really good job in Boulder. Those were hard to get, and I couldn't figure out how that had happened, but they arranged it all, okay, so that I could be handled, because I was beginning to see a lot of the corruption and the weird stuff going on in Los Angeles. I had handlers there too. And one of the first things that happened to me here in New Mexico was that I wasn't eligible for retirement yet when I got here. I was 2 years away, and during those 2 years I was on Medicaid, and I qualified for free cataract surgery, and that's when they put a camera in my left eye, and I'm almost sure there's a camera in there, because they were able to then track me everywhere. They could see everything I could see. I was tracked everywhere. They knew the minute I was leaving my home. They knew everything about me, everything. And so I became hyper aware that there was a camera in my eye. I figured that out right away after it was implanted. I didn't say anything, but I knew it. might have even been a way to do a, what do you call that? A COINTELPRO investigation, using me and my eyes to see things and to provide documentation of what was going on in the area. It could have even been that. Because supposedly, my theory is I'm one of these super spy people. So maybe I was already groomed to do that. And I want to show you some of the work that I was doing when I was in Los Angeles before I got transferred to Boulder. I'll be right back. I just found this stuff, and I can't believe I still have these things. I can't believe all these years later after college and after my life in Los Angeles, I can't believe that I still have some of this stuff. It's actually uncanny. And it is coming out right when I need it. But I was working for someone who I later found out was a CIA man who had his own independent graphic design business, and it was called The Hitman of Design. And this is one of the projects that he had me working on. It was supposedly for a TV show that was going to be produced, and it was called Invasion of Privacy. Look at that little eyeball. I just told you I had a camera implanted in my eye. And in this timeline, there's been this incredible invasion of privacy everywhere. Okay, so look, this is what they were doing with us then. Now, this is when I was much younger and I lived in LA, and I still have Xerox copies of some of the stuff I was... It got really weird, you know. I was supposed to be producing prototypes. Look at the pearls, too. Uh-oh. Yeah, Pearle was always... That was something that must have been programmed in earlier on. Wow. Okay. And also, my family had a fixation with Disney stuff, and I think that I had a contract. I was supposed to produce a children's book once upon a time, or some kind of intellectual content that Disney could use. And so I did begin working on a children's book when I lived in LA at that time. And it was going to be called Tiki Girl. And there's Tiki Girl. And she had a pet named Basil the Blue Monkey. Okay, and now what does this remind you of? Some Disney feature cartoons, maybe, that were later made, and I never got a penny. I never got a penny. Instead, someone from my high school that I had had a crush on showed up at my apartment in Los Angeles when I lived there. This was back in the 80s. And they sent him to my home. They had him contact me, and this is someone I had a big crush on, and he was working for Disney. And of course I pulled this out and I showed him. Oh, look what I'm working on. And like, he stole my idea and took it back there, and they made those movies about it. I'm pretty sure that they stole my idea for that. Okay, does this have a year on it? I don't think so, no. But she was, you know, like Polynesian. The whole thing was set in it was like a Polynesian setting, and I didn't even know what I was doing. I didn't know what the story was yet or anything. But here's some more drawings from that. Okay, scene: an island paradise, tropical jungle, vines, exotic flowers, some scary flowers too. Pitcher plant which gobbles monkeys and lizards sometimes. Monster controls these. There was a monster character too. I don't know. Then it says flower, rare jungle rose must be found by Blue Monkey for Tiki Girl to make a potion. Grown-ups in this land play with toys. Teeny tiny tiki teacups. There's Tiki Girl drinking out of her teeny tiny tiki teacup. And there's Basil the Blue Monkey, and there's another character here that was like a spirit character. What does it say? Was called Loki Man at night in Basil's dream. So I was sort of developing characters and drawing what they would look like and stuff, but I didn't have a plot outlined. Here's more drawings of like what Tiki Girl's room looked like. And there she is doing something. What is she doing with Basil next to her? What does this say? Why does Tiki Girl wear sunglasses? Maybe an evil jungle monkey put a spell on her so that the light would hurt her eyes, so that she would have to stay inside and couldn't see him trying to steal magic bananas from her magic banana tree in the backyard. This is Basil the Blue Monkey helping Tiki Girl plant seeds. But one day when Basil was down at the beach, he found a pair of sunglasses that had washed ashore, so Tiki Girl now wears them, gathering fruit and for tiki tea parties outside. So I never wrote the book. This was stolen from me. And then I started having all these problems in LA. I had a lot of problems there. People were coming after me. I didn't like what was happening with this guy, the hitman of design. He was a hitman, okay? He was a CIA person. He was part of MK Ultra. They were doing experiments on me even then. And I was being passed around too. I was being passed around. I didn't understand why my relationships were so bad. They weren't even relationships. That's what these Masons do with their daughters. They don't care what happens to them. They don't give a shit. You're disposable when you're from this kind of a family. You're disposable. I had already been rendered disposable. So I had my ideas stolen by a representative from Walt Disney, and I later found him in my yearbook, and I took a screenshot of that. I went to a website that had people's yearbooks, had high school yearbooks. I forget what that website's called, but I looked up some people and I found a picture of him. I remembered his name, but I have a picture of him, and he's the one that came and stole the idea. So, and it was taken back to Disney, and I never got paid anything for it. But they're still making movies in that with those characters. Okay. Here's Basil's favorite breakfast, Banana Man pancakes with apple mouths and coconut milk. So I was having fun trying to write a children's book and working on weird projects for the Hitman of Design. And later, after this period, I took a trip to Nepal, and I have notes and notebooks and stuff from that trip too that are very interesting. And I think that trip was an MK Ultra excursion, and it was done with people from this university in Boulder, where I later, many years later, ended up working on the staff. And it was part of a graduate study abroad program that I never got the graduate credits for, because everything that happened on that trip was so weird. I left early. I just walked out. I stayed for most of it, but then eventually, they were doing experiments with us over there. And it was like they had gotten us way far away from home, and were doing weird things to us. And I realized that too. I realized it. And I was a lot older than many of the people that were on this trip. They were all in their 20s, and I was already 30. I think I turned 30 on that trip. So I was out of college and had been for years, and I was developing an interest in Buddhism. And so I signed up for this trip to Nepal, and lo and behold, I was accepted to go on the trip. And I'm pretty sure that's because it was an MK Ultra experiment, and I was included in that. For some reason, they wanted me in a Buddhist thing, and I, since then, I have decided that that has something to do with a past life of mine. It has something to do with a past life of mine. This trip to Nepal that I took, because during the trip I started having past life flashbacks, and I had an out-of-body experience at one point, and they were triggering me over and over. People on the trip love bombed me, then they rejected me, then they love bombed me, then they rejected me. And when I came back from the trip, like I said, I left early because they were doing too much weird stuff. And one of the younger people on the trip, his name was Chris, and he was in his 20s, and he was a tall, gangly young man, but he was really sweet. And they were putting a lot of pressure on Chris to do what they said, and they were conditioning us down to learn how to meditate, and we were being taught how to meditate in a hall, not a quiet place, but there was this really loud Tibetan orchestra that was practicing inside this temple too, where we were learning how to meditate. And if you've ever heard one of those, they're just loud. They have cymbals crashing, and they're blowing these long horns. It's really noisy and obnoxious. And they made us meditate in there. And they were telling us that we had to learn how to meditate under those circumstances. If we really wanted to be a real Buddhist, you had to be able to tame yourself down and go and let go of everything, even in the midst of a lot of chaos and noise and stuff, which I think was just MK Ultra confusing, weird, contrary, split your mind in two kind of stuff, okay? They try to shatter your mind. And so Chris also realized that he was being bullied and he was being weirded out and stuff, and I went to him privately and I said, look, you don't have to stay here. You don't have to. I said, it never occurred to him that he could just leave. But by that time, I had decided that was what I was going to do. I was just going to leave. They kept telling me, oh, you'll never get out of here. It's really hard to get out. It's hard to get on a flight, and it's always so crowded. And it was. Anytime you went to that airline ticket, travel agency, then this is back in the 1980s when you had to go to a travel agency, and it was before all this electronic ID got started and stuff, and you still had a paper plane ticket, and it was all done the old-fashioned way still, all this travel. And they tried to discourage me from leaving, saying, you'll never get out of here. Well, the day that I decided to do it, I breezed right in there, and there was nobody in there, and there was no line, and I got a ticket just like that. Snapped it up, make it snappy, okay? We are a unicorn, okay? That's why we were subjected to all this. We were born and bred to be a Hunger Games participant, all right? A super spy and all that. So when we walk into a place with our mind made up, it happens, and it did. And I told Chris, just follow me, and he did. And we both got tickets, and we got the hell out of there. We left. We left before the trip was over, and they were very mad at us for leaving too, but I never got my graduate credit either for that. I was there for about 5 weeks, I think. I think it was a 6-week trip, and I skipped the very end, which was when they went on a trek up into the Himalayas to visit these mountain villages, and I didn't think I was cut out for that either, so I didn't want to go. I had visions because of the way we had already been mistreated on the trip. I had visions of something bad unfolding up there or something, and I didn't want to go. And so I got the hell out. Never got my credit. And then years later ended up on the staff of this university in Boulder. Again, being mistreated in yet another MK Ultra experiment they were doing there. It never ended. It hasn't ended. It still hasn't ended. They have to supervise and watch everyone who was ever in the program for life, especially if you had a blended bloodline with some kind of off-planet DNA. All right. What other downloads did I not read? Oh, here's some sketches from that trip. I was going to show you this book that here's a drawing of from. We visited various Rinpoches there at their monasteries, and this is from one of those places where that's a big tree with prayer flags hanging all over it. And this is from the days when I used to sit down and sketch things. And while I was there, I had I had a monk pose for me so I could draw his hands making a mudra. And these monks, they thought I was something. They were really impressed by my talent. And I was making all these little laminated cards. I've shown you my laminated cards. I have a handmade oracle deck made out of my laminated cards, but I had taken a whole bunch of those with me, and I was handing them out to these Rinpoche people and these teachers over there that were teaching us how to draw Buddhas using the ancient methods of Thangka painting methods. Here's another sketch I made when I was there of inside a shrine room with a Buddha statue. Oh, this is a really nice picture. This is an offering plate from the temple. If you went to the temple to do a devotion ceremony, you would take this offering plate with you. And it had to have all this various stuff on it. It had rice, it had incense, it had flowers and tika powders, these are called. This is kind of what they make the little red dot on their forehead. You can see I'm wearing one today. I'm wearing a bindi dot. I have connection to India and Tibet in my past lives, I'm pretty sure. This is some kind of little bready thing that you would put on your offering plate too. I don't remember what it was. It was some kind of little bread wafer thing. And I was getting in trouble with the locals for drawing stuff like this. They didn't like it that I was making a sketch of it, but other locals loved it. Like when I sat down to sketch, I sat down on the steps of the monuments to draw things, and immediately I would draw a crowd. And pretty soon I attracted this one little boy who was so cute. And sorry, I'm getting emotional remembering this. He wanted to be my helper, and he wanted to carry my paint box around for me and sit next to me. And there were all these kids there in Nepal who were just street urchins, and they were very poor. And I would sneak around in the alleys and give money to them when nobody was looking. And I remember one time one lady saw me doing that, and she gave me this look that was like so deeply admiring or something. It was like this look of, oh my God, you're so nice. You're such a nice person to give that kid that money. What could I do? I couldn't really do anything to help them. Anyway, that trip really touched me very deeply. You can see. And later on, I made another trip to a Buddhist country, Thailand, with some of these same people from Boulder that were affiliated with this university where I ended up working. And This was long after the trip to Nepal. And I was on a trip to visit and teach girls who had been in the sex trafficking industry, and some of them had been made into prostitutes at very young ages, and that was another trip that made me cry a lot. Just thinking about it. These young girls were so happy that we were there, and I knew how to draw, and so we were teaching them English, and they were teaching them how to draw things, and they were really talented, some of them, and they were so excited to have a teacher who could teach them how to draw and paint. They were so excited. They were so happy. And then, we all cried when we left. We didn't want to leave them there, but we had to. So you can see the fullness of my experiences. It stretched across the world, and I did a lot of work around people, and so that's why it has hurt me so deeply to be trapped here in New Mexico for so many years and isolated the way I have been, with people trying to kill me and stuff. You can see the kind of person I really am. You can see who I really am. I never deserved anything I ever got here. I never deserved any of it. And I'm still here all alone, isolated, away from people. I think my parents were murdered. They died. Nobody even told me they died. No one can tell me how they died. I don't know what happened. So these are my experiences as an MK Ultra survivor. I was later in life, I was tapped to do some important work, and I did it. I showed up for it. I tried to help people and stuff. But I had to leave because they were running experiments on me, and I knew it. The Thailand trip ended weird too. People left, and I stayed on for another week, and I went down to that beach, that famous beach at Phuket, and I was there during a big, almost like a hurricane. All the power went out. It was really scary, and that's the same location where years later everything got swept away in a huge tsunami. I could have been killed there. I could have died there, and then I was another person that was like a handler stayed on with me. It was an older lady who was from Boulder, who was affiliated with those independent high schools they have there, and I think those were also experiments of MK Ultra. They had 2 or 3 experimental high schools there where they did weird shit with the kids there. And this lady, her job was stalking, STOCKING, the candy machines. Her job was to provide all this candy and sugar to those people, which she was a nurse, and she knew that was totally unhealthy. But this is part of the MK Ultra thing too. They feed you a lot of sugar, and unhealthy food. They try to make you fat and unhealthy and stuff. That's part of the program too. And so she stayed on with me there in Thailand and got me into some trouble. She took me shopping at a jewelry store and talked me into buying a diamond ring that I couldn't even afford, and said, I'll loan you the money. And I thought, I never thought how I was going to pay it back. And then when we got back, she started leaning on me and acting really mean to me, and you've got to pay me back for that and stuff. And I was like, oh shit, I got myself into some trouble. I ended up having to pay her back. I was in debt to that lady for a long time. The ring was quite a bit more than I could have afforded at the time. I think I paid $1,500 about for it. I had it appraised after I got back, and it was real gold and diamonds. It had a ruby in it too. But she talked me into doing that as a way of getting me into some trouble, I think. So that trip ended bad too. So I was one of these people that kind of went all over the world and did a lot of things as part of their experiments with me. And also I was on a study abroad trip when I was in college too. That was bad. And we went to London and Amsterdam, and there was some, they did bad things to me then too on that trip. At one point, everybody on the trip, we had gone to some famous cathedral in England. I forget the name of it now, but it was one of those huge Gothic cathedrals that we all got on a bus to go see. And they left without me, and they just left me there. And I think that's one of the things they'll do to you as an MK Ultra victim. They will do stuff like that to you, to panic you, to scare you to death. I was so mad they did that to me. And when I finally got back with the group, they were laughing at me and stuff. The leaders that took us there were laughing at me. It was real scary for me to just get left behind like that. But that's the type of thing that they would do to us. Okay, so what else did I say? Where are these bodies coming from? Trafficked, okay? Missing kids and adults who get abused. The abuse is the portal for the soulless occupying force to get in. Then these people are taken over and they become abusers, killers, traffickers, etc. Okay, they get butt graped, right? That's how they put a spirit on you. Okay, so it is like an occupation within an occupation and has overtaken Earth humans. It's an occupation within an occupation. What do they want? To run a sadistic empire of profitable abuse and crime, I guess. This is why we need to appeal to God, but they also succeed in turning us away from God by making the abuse seem unbeatable. It has become unbearable for me. It's been going on such a long time. They've had me in fight or flight mode. I escaped from the low-income housing that was being broken into constantly, and I was had drugs dusted on my food and stuff. I escaped from there when my abuser died, and I inherited his house. And I think he was such a drunk asshole. I think he forgot that he had done a transfer on death deed of this house to me. I think he forgot he did that. So when he died, his two brothers were surprised that the house went to me. And ever since then, I've been stalked and harassed by these two brothers and their network that's of stalkers here. Okay, they've been trying to get me out of here. They don't like that I'm living here. They've sabotaged the house in various ways. I had a tenant, and there's a little mother-in-law house right on the property, just feet away from this house where I live. And there were tenants there when I came, and I realized just recently that my abuser had died or disappeared quite a while before the house was given over to me. And the tenants were just making it look like they were taking care of him. The reason why I say that is because when I got possession of the house and got into it, finally, it was filthy inside. And it didn't look like anybody had lived in it for months. And I think indeed that they hadn't. Something happened to my abuser, and now I think he escaped. I think he faked his death. I think he went to Mexico and had plastic surgery. And I think he's been around here lately. I think I saw him even. He's still trying to kill me, okay? They wanted this house back, all right? The occupied host bodies, okay, the abuse has become unbearable. And now these weather changes are exacerbating the suffering everywhere. But maybe all of that is the hand of God, And the only way out of this mess is through it by destroying all of these host bodies. Okay, are they, and I wrote, I think so, are they being destroyed by the fire, the heat waves and stuff, the floods? Are many more people dying than we know? Okay, the volcanoes erupting, the earthquakes. Now we're being told that California is about to break off like Edgar Cayce said it would. All right, the occupied host bodies are being culled, C-U-L-L-E-D, culled. I've said this before. Those who are surviving this, the good-hearted who are under constant attack, are meant to survive. This is why we are so hated. This is a miserable timeline. It really is. But CERN is now shut down, so possibly some of the attacks will subside as the portal is closed. Now, I swung my pendulum about that the other day, and I got an answer that it will never be activated again. These are my predictions. So matter is condensed into a high-density beam, then projected through a stargate, then reconstituted on the other side. And that's what the supercolliders are. Those are the stargates. Okay? Many countries have particle accelerators, including Iran. It feels to me like the bad ETs projecting themselves in across the space borders want to mine rare earth minerals. I think that's their real business here. Okay, they want to strip all the people off the planet and then just strip mine it, okay, to death. And they'll traffic anything they can get. They're first trafficking people off the planet with certain people who were genetically engineered to be certain types of people. People want to own and buy you as a pet or as a slave. There's intergalactic slave markets where you could be sold. I think that was what somebody wanted to do with me, but I made it loud and clear, kept screaming that that's not happening to me. I don't consent to any of this. I screamed over and over, and I know they heard me through the iCam. I know they hear everything I say, okay? They know what I'm putting in this video right now. They always know what my videos say before I even post them, because I see all this stuff coming to my YouTube feed that relates to stuff I said and talked about in my video. Or even, this has something to do with China too, because I started developing a taste for shopping on Temu.com, and they will put stuff into my feed there that is kind of like mocking me and joking with me about it. You know, they know what I'm saying. They watch me through my device, okay? All my devices are hacked. I don't know how to unhack them. I don't. It feels like, to me, like the bad ETs projecting themselves in across the space borders want to mine rare earth minerals, which run their tech, maybe to do with data centers too. This might have to do with the data centers too. I think it does. And then from the Stargate TV show, people sometimes got stuck on the wrong side or in hostile or other planets. So do they have parallel timelines or something? Or, you know, I know that where I've been stuck is called a decoy town, and it's a trafficking center, and they're doing all kinds of, they mainstreamed MK Ultra, so there's all kinds of dysfunctional families here that abuse their kids so they can traffic them. There are families that sell their kids. They feed them icky bad food and make them real fat and stuff. There's a lot of like disposable Hispanic people in this area that are in gangs, that are unwed mothers, that I saw the neighbors that were living next door to me were grooming a kid this way to become to have a demon on him, I think. I ended up having to report that to the authorities because it was so weird. It freaked me out what I saw going on next door to me, right next door. it feels like this place, New Mexico, might actually be some other planet made to look like Earth, or, it's a decoy town made to look like a real town, but it isn't really. It's just a trafficking hub where they do organ trafficking, they do human trafficking, they do weird experiments on people, they trap old MK Ultra victims who are dangerous to have out running around because they see through what's going on, and they try to kill you. They tried to kill me over and over and over here, so many different ways. You can't believe how stressful that is, to know that people are constantly trying to kill you. That's what the nightmare I've been living now for 9 years. They've done all kinds of things to try to get me. They had a dog chase after me even. I almost got attacked by a dog. Mauled by a dog, I and others maybe got stuck, maybe are like hostages. It certainly feels like it's impossible to get out. Then I tried to leave the area 4 years ago. I got stopped by DEW-TEC. Yeah, they were aiming DEW weapons at me in my car as I was driving, something that made me really sleepy. I kept having to pull over. I could have been killed on that trip. And before I left, I had to drive through the desert. They shredded my AC lines, so my truck air didn't work, and it still doesn't work. Okay, I'm a 68-year-old senior citizen in poor health because of all this, and they try to fuck with my car all the time. They have fucked with my car. Maybe outside this area, there's nothing resembling the old U.S. I used to live in. Right now, we see only news stories about natural disasters happening, supposedly in other states, but this may be a simulation. Okay, download from today. The Hunger Games, Survivor, all that is part of MKUltra. Contestants were manufactured. People were genetically hybridized with other star races or animals or something, maybe both, to enhance performance. Just the same way that in athletics today, we have games where participants are competing using performance-enhancing drugs, or, they're transgendered and stuff like that. Maybe the UFC fighters use them. This is disturbing because I've been a Trump supporter. Is he or his administration backing these Hunger Games? I don't know. I sure hope not. But the first thing he swore he'd do at the start of his first term in 2017 was to go after the CIA. That was one of the first things he said he was going to do. And now we have Anna Paulina Luna doing the MKUltra hearings. So is that good? I don't know. No matter what the scandal is, it never gets off the ground. The disclosure of whatever it was never really gets off the ground. But now they're talking about MKUltra slaves. They're talking about people in Congress and the Senate who have been made into undetectable slaves. They can be given a command. Manchurian Candidate movie. I told you at the beginning of this, it's the Manchurian Candidate movie, okay? So I think MKUltra, and I said, I do think the Epstein files are entwined with the MKUltra thing. I do think so. Because remember I said, they roofied people, then they got blackmail material about them, and some of those people may have been already Manchurian candidates. They may have already been hypnotized and have had MKUltra protocols used on them, like Bill Clinton, Hillary Clinton, I don't know. They could have been. So I think MKUltra was a project with the objective of creating everyone to be undetectable slaves, so that everything could be manipulated using manipulated people who were all controlled by handlers. Now, I've recommended a certain movie maker. Woody Allen has made movies about a lot of this stuff, but you don't get it unless you know all this stuff. And the one that really talked about that is The Curse of the Jade Scorpion. If you haven't seen that, everybody in that movie is hypnotized, and nobody knows they are. And they're all hypnotizing and cursing each other all the time and triggering each other, and then they re-trigger each other. And it's a very funny movie, but it's also very darkly funny. But that's what it's about, okay? Much of the coercion involved use of drugs combined with hypnosis and abuse. Also, there was and still is abusive massive sexual misconduct. Yeah. A certain subset of these original lab rat people, the ones who didn't respond well to the hypnosis and abuse, were very difficult to handle, and they're hard to handle when they wake up, like me, for the people who do programs, who ran the programs. And I'm one of those people who never managed to, somehow I was never really hypnotized all the way. Okay, so my download is that's why they have this Hunger Games thing. It's a big death ritual wherein everyone who competes is, what does that say? Is something is thrown into a very dangerous environment or situation for entertainment purposes. Elites watch and place bets, but do not intervene except to give occasional support, like they did in the movie, to give small gifts of medicines or food or something to their favorite players, and the ones they might be betting on or backing to win the bets. They're going to win the big money. You're not. Okay. The contestants are all chimeric human hybrids. They are lab rats. So these are my downloads, and that's my MK Ultra testimony. Okay. I am an empath. I'm a really sensitive, very sensitive empath. So going through all this has been it's been horrendous for me. Okay. Just horrendous. And I showed you my empathic side. I cried a lot at certain points in this video. That's the empathic side of me coming out. And so I was made into a scapegoat by this mafia-like cult who's trying to take over everything and control everyone by hypnosis and drugging and abuse. And then the people they can't manage very well, you get made into a scapegoat, and you get blamed for the crimes they do after they steal your identity, and they try to throw you in prison, or if they can't get you in there, they try to kill you. So that's the path that my story took until I got trapped in here, tightly trapped, all my communications to the outside world cut off, and people hadn't even known where I am. I really need help. I really, really, really need help. And I would like to testify in those hearings, but I can't get out of here. I'm practically penniless. I live on a Social Security income, and I inherited an old crumbling house that has no mortgage. Okay, it was already paid off. So I'm managing to survive, but just barely. Because if anything goes wrong, I can just barely afford to get it fixed. It's been horrible for me. Just horrible. I need to get out of here. I need justice. I need the Justice Department to come down and help me get the hell out of here. And I don't know what's going on, but I keep hoping they're going to raid this town, because the justice system here is completely corrupt. At one point, I was being gang-stalked all over the place by the ex-chief of police here, a tall, scary-looking, ugly man who was following me all over the grocery stores and scaring me to death, stalking me up and down the aisles and stuff. And I think they live streamed that for entertainment purposes. Me being terrified in the grocery store, and him, playing boogeyman and stuff. And he got fired from his job after some kind of police-involved shooting. They quietly took him out and put a new chief in, and they had one of their big rituals where they have a procession of all the first responders in the area. And they recently had a first responder shooter drill here, and I decided it wasn't a drill at all. I decided it was just nothing but a big meeting, because they can't do one of those processions right now because I think they're under scrutiny. I think they're under heavy scrutiny, and it's partially due to these license plate cameras they have all over town here now, and to geofencing. They zeroed in on these gangs here and what they're doing. So they can't do their rituals and processions anymore. And I think what those are is it's just a reinforcement of who's in the brotherhood. If you go against us, we'll kill you type of meeting, you know. So instead they had something that was supposedly a shooter drill, but I think what it really was meetings. They were in an abandoned school talking about, what are we going to do? What do we do now? They're catching us. I think some of them have maybe already been caught, and they're trying to figure out a plan, I think, is what's going on. That was the download that I got. I drove past the location where they were supposedly having the drill. It was just a bunch of first responder cars parked in a parking lot. I didn't see anybody doing any drills. Maybe they were inside doing stuff in this abandoned school they use. But I think that school was actually used for trafficking kids once upon a time. Well, now I've said enough so that they're going to want to come and drop a bomb on my house, probably. And I'm going to lock this video down. But I wanted to talk about this stuff because of the hearings going on. I got to figure out how to send it to Luna. I've got to get this video to Luna. I have to. All right. This is Pearle Snapp signing off.